Now, let's move on to talk about the basic principles of the Bayesian decision rule. So, according to the Bayes theorem, we have this expression that on the left-hand side, you have y given x. This really says that if I give you, if you have seen a sample x, what is the probability of getting class I? Now, according to the Bayes theorem, I can write this left-hand side as the product of the likelihood and also the prior and also the total probability. So the meaning of the left-hand side is that it is the posterior probability that after you have seen the x, the likelihood on the right-hand side is what you would do before you see the x. So I want to emphasize one thing, that when you try to do the classification, you are really doing this interaction between the likelihood and also the prior and also this posterior. You cannot just use the prior, because if you only use the prior, then that means you don't really pay any attention to your data. Okay? There's 70% of the time I will see the building, and so I just close my eye, it will be a building image. Okay? So that's just purely based on your prior experience. And that's not useful. If you just use the likelihood, then you are adopting a frequentist point of view, and you just disregard any prior knowledge that you have with the problem that you encounter with. And so in many cases, this prior knowledge can actually buy you a lot of insights when you solve the problem. So if we adopt this idea of trying to analyze the posterior, then we can try to formulate the problem as follows. What would be the best class that can be associated with my observation? Literally what we're asking is that suppose I have seen this sample point x, what is the most likely class that have generated this sample? So you're asking a posterior question. Suppose I have seen a sample x, what is the most likely class that will give me the maximum probability? Okay? So, in other words, you are trying to find a class I that can maximize this posterior probability. Once you can maximize this posterior probability, you have found one decision rule. Now, we can debate whether this kind of decision rule is optimum or not. That will be the subject of next lecture. But at least for now, we see that by maximizing the posterior probability, we in principle should be able to get a classifier that will at least make some sense. Okay? That is a classifier that can best explain the presence of my data point x with respect to all the classes that I can choose. So if we adopt this principle, then you can see that I can rewrite the posterior distribution according to the product of the likelihood and also the prior and also the total probability. Now, since you're doing the argmax operation, you're maximizing this probability, and you're maximizing with respect to your I, well, I can do a small trick here by turning this ratio into the sum of the logs. Okay, so if I put a log here, okay, so if I put a log here on this entire thing, I am not going to change the maximizer. I'm going to change the functional value, but I am not going to change the guy that maximizes the function, because the log function is monotonically increasing. So if I maximizes this function, then I will also maximize the log of that same function. So I'm putting a log here, then you can write as a log of the likelihood plus the log of the prior minus the log of the total probability. And since this term has nothing to do with your I, you can just easily drop this log of the px. Px doesn't contain any I, so it has nothing to do with your maximization. Alright, so at this point, you can see that what is that? That is just the log likelihood of my distribution. If I have a Gaussian, and if I take a log, we just show you a slide, then you can break the exponential into just by looking at the Mahalanobis distance, right? So that would be the idea. And you also have this prior term here. So now what? Well, so now let's do a little bit more calculation. Suppose we have this d-dimensional Gaussian, and let's plug in this d-dimensional Gaussian's likelihood function, which is this, to likelihood that we just derived from the derivation before. Now, if you plug this in, you realize what? Well, you realize that there is a quadratic term that will come out because of the log. You also realize that there is a d over 2 log 2 pi that comes out from this constant. You have 1/2 of log of the sigma that will come out. You also have this log pi. Log pi comes from here. So you have all these terms staying around. Then, of course, this is log 2 pi is a constant with respect to your maximization. So you can drop this log 2 pi because it doesn't really depend on I. Now, I can group the terms according to what I have shown you before. The first term would be something that depends on x. The second term would be something that does not depend on x. I write it in this way because I want to do some calculation. All right, so far what we have derived is that if you want to adopt a maximizing the posterior probability approach, then at the end of the day, your best classifier, okay, so this is the class that you're going to predict, is going to be a maximization of this form. All right? Okay, so let's work out a very simple 1D example just to get more ideas before we move on to the high-dimensional cases. Okay, so the decision rule is fairly simple. You're going to solve this maximization problem. We do not need to do gradient descent or whatever because there will be a closed form solution for this problem. Why? Well, let's look at a very simple case where you only have two classes, class 1 and class 2. And let's also assume that they are the scalars, so that your life is a lot easier. Rather than dealing with matrices, let's work on scalars. So if you plug in the mu's, okay, these mean vectors as a scalar mu I, the covariance matrix as just sigma square, okay. So now you have a class 1's mu, but class 1 and class 2, they both have the same sigma. So let's assume that it's a very, very restrictive case, but let's derive some equations. So what are you going to do? Well, you have these two classes. You want to find the class that will maximize this probability. So literally what you're doing is that you put the two classes side by side, and you check which one is bigger. If class 1's probability is bigger than class 2's probability, then you would declare that this data point x is more likely to come from class 1 because the probability is higher. Or vice versa, you will claim that the data point should come from class 2 if this probability is higher. So you set up an inequality that compares the two classes, and then you realize that because of the very restrictive assumption I'm making here, you have this log sigma, they are the same for both sides, so you can cancel them. And then with a lot of magical steps that I'm skipping, then at the end of the day, and if you trust my calculation, you will end up having this expression. Okay? So these dots, they are very entertaining, and I encourage you to sit down and then just buy a coffee and work it out. It's not too hard. Okay, so now let's look at this expression. This expression says that I want to determine my class. Okay, I want to determine whether class 1 or class 2 is more likely to be the class that generate my sample data point x. So this result says that all I need to do is to check whether my data point x, which is now a scalar, is bigger than or smaller than this quantity. This quantity has nothing to do with your x. It's a constant with respect to your x. Everything here, mu1 and mu2, they are the model parameters. I haven't talked about how do we estimate the model parameters, which we would do it later. But then once you can estimate mu1, mu2, and sigma, then everything is defined. Okay, this is just a threshold. You're checking whether your scalar is bigger than a threshold or not. If your scalar, if your sample data point is bigger than this threshold, then you say that I believe that my sample data point x comes from class 1. Otherwise, it comes from class 2. Is that clear? That is a very simple Bayesian decision rule. It's called Bayesian because you're leveraging this model. It's a Bayesian model that contains the likelihood term and also the prior term. The decision rule is as simple as just checking a threshold in the 1D case. All right, so now once we understand this, then we can move on and ask, then what is the decision rule? Okay, so the decision rule, I've shown you that you can just check the data point, and then you compare with the threshold and then make a decision. In general, when you have high-dimensional Gaussians, this kind of checking the number with respect to a threshold may not work. Because why? Well, you have a vector x. Then what is the corresponding threshold? Are you going to check for every element of your vector? That is unclear, right? So in general, when you're dealing with high-dimensional data, what you would do is the following. You are going to write down this function, which is the likelihood function and also the prior. You are going to define a term called the discriminant function. The discriminant function is a function that is indexed by each class. So for class 1, you have a discriminant function. For class 2, you have a discriminant function. Then what you're doing is that if my discriminant function I evaluated at x is bigger than in class J's the discriminant function, then I would declare that this is belong to class I. Otherwise, it will belong to class J. Again, this is two-class classification. If you're multi-class, there will be some additional things that you need to worry about. Okay. Now, this is actually equivalent to what we have before. In the previous slide, you realize that on the left-hand side, you have this term here. On the right-hand side, you have that. This is exactly your discriminant function because it's just the log of the likelihood plus the log of the prior. So now, if I follow this definition, then my decision could be a lot easier. All I need to do is to check the difference between the ith discriminant minus the jth discriminant. And if this quantity gx is positive, then I would declare this as class I. Otherwise, I would declare class J. That would lead to what we call the hypothesis function or your prediction. The prediction will give you two classes, 1 or minus 1, 1 or 0, depending on the state of your gx. So if your g is positive, g is negative, gx is 0, you have three different situations. So what we are going to do next is going to show you that this G, okay, for the Gaussian case, you can actually write it in terms of W transpose X plus W0, something that we want to see, right? Because so far we have gone through all these derivations, we've gone through the posterior probabilities, and we claim that eventually we are going to find a linear classifier. So what is the linear classifier? The linear classifier will take this form. And if this linear classifier is evaluated at x is bigger than 0, so you're living on one side of the hyperplane, you will claim that this is class 1. Otherwise, you will claim that this is class 0. So the W and W0, in principle, they should be determined according to your mu's, according to your sigmas. Once I know the mu's, I know the sigmas, I should be able to define precisely W and W0. So that's the goal next.